Welcome to another episode of Chat Sports Talk, and welcome to Week 4 of 2025-2026 college football season. We're entering our fourth week. Definitely some interesting takes. You've seen Notre Dame start off the season 0-2. A lot of problems with that offense. Crazy things are happening. Illinois is in the top 10. I mean, what type of world are we living in? But besides that, last week, week 3 actually went 9-3, so I actually improved from our first 2 weeks of 7-5. Of course, I picked Tennessee to beat Georgia, and then in the game, they had time to run one more play to get a couple extra more yards, or center the kicker. They decided to kick it on a third down with plenty of time left, and then lost in overtime. Pitt, West Virginia. West Virginia got embarrassed across the river in Ohio, taking on the Bobcats. And they come home in the backyard brawl and took it to Pittsburgh and took them to overtime to win it. And then Notre Dame, aforementioned Irish, had 2 bad snaps. One cost them extra point that at the end of the game when they took the lead and the defense couldn't stop A&M. And I told you A&M has beast on that team, on that offense. And they marched down the field. All they had to do was kick an extra point to win, and that was it. Notre Dame started the season 0-2 after making all the way to the championship game last year. Now they're scratching their heads trying to figure out how to get back to the playoffs, which I don't think they have an angle, but stranger things have happened. But everywhere else, I called it. So, yay me. Like the Vanderbilt, South Carolina, I picked Vanderbilt. I didn't expect Vanderbilt to knock out Sellers. So that should be interesting to see how South Carolina can progress from there. But, and the Wisconsin-Alabama, I thought it'd be closer. Alabama blew them out of the water. So all that out of the way, let's dive into week number 4. I got another 12 games on the docket. Kick things off in Salt Lake City with the 16th ranked Utah undefeated taking on the 17th ranked Texas Tech Red Raiders, who are also undefeated. First game in the Big 12 calendar for both these schools. Both these programs are doing extremely well. I mean, Texas Tech has been lighting up the scoreboard. 62 against Arkansas Pine Bluff. 62 against Kent State. 45 against Oregon State. Their defense has yet to allow more than 14 points. On the flip side, you look at Utah's defense, the most they've allowed is 10, and it's going down. Now, they blew out UCLA and then throttled Cal Poly. Didn't have any issues with Wyoming. So these are definitely two teams that have a lot of potent offense. Somebody's about to get their first loss of the season. And you look at Tech, Morton leading the charge for the quarterback, over 900 yards passing, with 11 touchdowns in the pick, and Hill coming in the backfield for only a little over 200 yards. For Utah, Dampier has over 600 yards with 7 touchdowns. He also leads them for almost 200 yards on the ground with a touchdown. So I think it's something that you're going to have to keep an eye on with Dampier to make sure that he's not going to be the sole runner as well as the passer, because you'll end up ruining the kid. And Daly is just a beast over there on the defensive side with 5 sacks, including 13 tackles. So there's a lot of going on with these two teams. Both offenses are both high-powering. It's to figure out which defense is going to show up. Looking at their track record thus far, more credence goes to Utah. But this is, never Utah beating UCLA gives a little more credence than Tech's win over Oregon State. But that's neither here nor there. Analytic-wise, Utah has a 65% advantage. The point spread gives Utah a 4.5-point spread. You know what? I see no lies in neither one of those inputs. I'm going Utah. Now let's head over to Memphis, where the undefeated Tigers will take on the 2-1 Arkansas Razorbacks, as Arkansas is looking to bounce back after their loss at Ole Miss, where they only lost by 7. And Memphis struggled against Troy last week. And remember, Troy was taken into Clemson before they ended up collapsing. So this is going to be a true test for Memphis to see if they can, get a marquee win. Arkansas needs to bounce back. Memphis is a good litmus test for that. For the Razorbacks, Green has over 860 yards in the air, 11 touchdowns, 2 picks. He also has over 300 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Same criticism of Utah. Same criticism here for Arkansas. For Memphis, Lewis has over 600 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns and the pick, while Smith has over 240, almost 250 yards on the ground with 4 TDs. So it's the Tigers rushing the attack is going to give Memphis some issues. Green is going to be a handful for that Tigers defense to try to corral. Can a Tiger hunt a Razorback? We'll see. Analytics give Arkansas almost a 60% advantage. Point spread favors Arkansas at 6.5. Once again, I really don't see anything. Looking at his past games, Memphis has not really hit any roadblocks as of yet. They've been favored every game. Troy's but the only one they had trouble with, and they failed to really score the 30 points, 38 points minimum, as they did against Georgia State. Chattanooga, they put up 45. And for Arkansas, they still put up 35 points against Ole Miss, but the defense coughed up 41. So the defense could put Memphis on lockdown. Different story. You'll be able to cage those Tigers. And I think Arkansas can do that. 6.5. I see no lie there. Taking Razorbacks in the win. Now we head up to Madison. Wisconsin went down to Alabama. Struggled immensely. Didn't have much success. They only able to get 14 points. Defense coughed up 38. Alabama's offense is starting to click now. That's going to be a problem for SEC. If you looked at Maryland's track record this far, Noma in particular, they're really, threatening them. I mean, Northern Illinois gave them the biggest scare when they beat them 20-9. But all over FAU, for Atlantic, 39-7. All over Townsend, 44-17. You look at Washington for the Terrapins. He has over 770 yards in the air, 6 touchdowns and a pick. And Williams comes out of the backfield for over 120 yards and a touchdown. For the Badgers, O'Neal, 520 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. That is what he has to clean up. That's going to be the Achilles heel for this team, is O'Neal ending plays abruptly. And then Jones coming out of the backfield for the Badgers for over 130 yards and a touchdown. So right now the running games are kind of moot. It's the passing attack. But O'Neal needs to clean up his problems, throwing too many picks. And that's one of the reasons why Alabama was able to roll over them. But right now, analytics favor Wisconsin at 6.5%. They also give them a 6.5-point spread. I will take Maryland for the points. I do think this will be a close contest. Unless Wisconsin can clean up what they did against the Tide, against the Terps. And it's going to be very difficult for them to kind of overcome some of those inaccuracies they did down in Tuscaloosa. So I do believe Maryland will make this a game, but I think Wisconsin will weather the storm and edge them out. But I am picking Wisconsin to slip past the Terps to get to 3-1. Then we have a rivalry game down there in Fort Worth, Texas between SMU and TCU. The battle for the Iron Skillet once again creeping into our viewing pleasure. And you looked at SMU's games, I mean, the Baylor one was a disappointment, losing in double overtime. Missouri State, they struggled against, ended up beating them 28-10. TCU, they just manhandled North Carolina 48-14, but otherwise not much else really to threaten them. I mean, Louisiana thought would give them a little bit more of a challenge. Didn't. So these two coming in, and Jennings for the Mustangs has over 830 yards in the air, 6 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's got to clean those interceptions. And Harden come out of the backfield for over 250 yards and 5 touchdowns. A very balanced offense for the Mustangs. For the Horned Frogs, Hoover over 620 yards in the air, 6 touchdowns at the pick. Well, Barnes comes out of the backfield over 150 yards on the ground and a touchdown. TCU's a little bit more pass-oriented, and something to have to worry about that. And like I said, SMU had a great game against Baylor, just couldn't get over that hump. But as long as, Jennings doesn't throw too many picks right now, he's at a 2-to-1 ratio, which is not good. That's not something you don't need, because Hoover's right now is at 6-to-1 ratio. If they were to have, hey, you throw 6 touchdowns with only 1 pick, we can live with that. But it's the rushing attack the Mustangs are going to generate, and something that TCU is going to have to try to counter. Now, looking at what they did against North Carolina, maybe they do the exact same thing. Who knows? But for me, for right now, analytics favor TCU at 67%. They also give them a 6.5-point spread. I'm bucking the trend on this one. I'm taking SMU to leave Fort Worth with the victory, retaining the Iron Skillet. Now we're over to Norman, Oklahoma, as the Boomer Sooners will take on the Auburn Tigers. Both teams are ranked. Oklahoma 11th, Auburn 22nd, both 3-0. First SEC game. So I have to get used to putting Oklahoma in SEC. But looking at the past few weeks, Oklahoma had a good contest against Michigan, a game that I did not think they would win. Because, looking at the litmus test of, their first game was against Illinois State, and they blew them up, which I knew they would. But they were too much for Michigan, and then, of course, they blew out Temple. For Auburn, the big win at Baylor, but Baylor was able to claw back in, just couldn't finish it off, and then they just rolled over Ball State and South Alabama with no issues. So right now, for the Tigers, Arnold over 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. Cobb out of the backfield for over 300 and 4 touchdowns. For Oklahoma, Matier over 940 yards in the air, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's something he has to clean up. And then Blaylock coming out of the backfield over 160 yards and 3 touchdowns. Auburn will take advantage of Matier's interceptions. There's no question about that one. No show their true colors in this one. And Auburn special teams is nothing you have to watch out for. They were a key factor in that Baylor win and grab that early lead, and their defense was able to just do enough to keep Baylor out from coming back. But Oklahoma right now is a new beast. I don't know if they're back to the top form like they used to could, but they're definitely heading in the right direction in terms of this team. And right now, analytics got them at 65%. The point spread has the Sooners at 6.5. I'm a little iffy on that point spread, but I'm taking Oklahoma in both occasions. I think this is going to be an excellent game, and Auburn's going to get their first loss of the season. Now we head back over to Oxnard, where the Rebels of Ole Miss, undefeated, will take on undefeated Tulane Green Wave. Tulane, once again, having another quiet little season. It's only early in the season thus far, so a lot of things could happen. But look who Tulane knocked off. Northwestern, 20-3. South Alabama escaped by 2. Got past Duke, 34-27. They're not going to be an easy out. And you saw what Ole Miss went up to Kentucky, slipped past them, 30-23 at Kroger Field. I was able to escape a potential loss to Arkansas at home, 41-35. So there's definitely some chinks in the armor of the Ole Miss Rebels. And Simmons, for the Rebels, 580 yards in the air, 4 TDs, 4 picks. That's going to be a problem, because if he continues to throw picks, I'll give Tulane the upset chance. Lacey comes out of the backfield for almost 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. For the Green Wave, Retzlaff, over 520 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. He's also come out the backfield for 280 yards and 6 touchdowns. So this is another team with that running quarterback mentality that finds ways to exploit things. Ole Miss defense is probably going to shut that down. So they'll come up with new ways to try to make this work for them. So Tulane's going to have to get creative on offense when they're given opportunities because of Simmons just coughed up the ball, which he shouldn't have. Tulane's going to keep this close. Right now, Ole Miss has an 87% analytic advantage and has a 12.5-point spread right now. I would take Tulane for the points. I think Tulane will make this closer than what a lot of them would think. I think Ole Miss will probably win by 10, to tell you the truth. But Tulane's going to be kept in it because of Simmons. And I think that's going to play havoc for him. Tulane's got to find some trickery to try to get some playmakers open, give Retzlaff some time to find open receivers. And then maybe once they do that, then he's able to run it a little bit more. But I don't think the Green Wave is going to be able to stop Wallace at all coming out of that back or catching. Not going to stop Lacey for coming out of that backfield, running them over. So I'm still picking Ole Miss, but I'll take Tulane for the points. Then we head to the cornfields of Nebraska over in Lincoln as the undefeated Cornhuskers take on the 21st ranked 2-1 Michigan Wolverines. Michigan comes to town after their get back to the flow thumping of Central Michigan after losing in Norman. As right now, Nebraska, this is their first true test since week 1 when they won at Kansas City against Cincinnati. And I think Cincinnati is eerily similar to how Michigan kind of runs their game plan, so we'll see how this one kind of goes. Underwood, over 620 yards in the air, 2 TDs and a pick. Not good numbers for that ratio. Haynes coming out of the backfield for over 380 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's the bread and butter of the Wolverines offense, is that rushing attack. For the Cornhuskers, the Mahomes clone, Raiola, over 820 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then Johnson, over 320 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns. I think it's going to be hard to keep Raiola contained because he mimics Patrick Mahomes. That's why I call him the Mahomes clone. His look is almost similar. His ability sometimes is almost similar. And this is going to be a key focal point for this Nebraska offense. Can they continue to thrive in the offense? This is probably going to be the next big test for them after that win against Cincinnati. Now they got to take on Big Blue and their yellow and the blue and maize and see if they can go in and knock off Big Red and the Cornhuskers. Analytics has a 50.3% Nebraska compared to the 49.7. But Vegas has it 2.5 in favor of Michigan. This is definitely a game I can see go either direction. However, I like Nebraska on this one. Underwood has some numbers, but he's not finding the pay dirt. Unless they can really push that secondary, which gives the running attack a little more room to breathe and attack, Nebraska can play close, play man-to-man, lock down the receivers, and just keep everything in front of them. Raiola gives you Nebraska a different playing ability, not to mention Johnson coming out of the backfield as well. Also same numbers as Haynes, just slightly lower with more carries, but when you got Johnson and Raiola coming out of there, it's going to be hard to try to contain either one, so it gives Raiola's chances to improvise a bit. And I watched him against Cincinnati, and he can. He's still learning a lot of ins and outs, but I like Nebraska in this one to knock off Michigan. Now it's time to head to Columbia, Missouri, where Mizzou, undefeated, 23rd ranked, takes on the the 2-1, South Carolina Gamecocks. And it's going to be a in-ring matchup between these two. Because South Carolina kind of got manhandled out there at home against Vanderbilt. Of course, not having Sellers really did not help them at all. But right now, he is listed as active against Mizzou. But we'll see how that one kind of plans out with that defense, especially with Damon Wilson coming back there because he's the leading sacker with 3 or Trotter with 15 tackles. So Sellers going to have some issues trying to escape, but he has over 400 yards in the air, but only 2 touchdowns and an interception. Like I said, he didn't do anything against Vanderbilt because he got knocked out, which kind of helped Vanderbilt win. Faison, only 135 yards on the ground, touchdown. So that South Carolina offense was inept last week. I kind of expect them to kind of bounce back like they get. It'll probably be more like what they did against Virginia Tech, where they're able to get past the Gamecocks 24-11. But with Mizzou, you have Pribula over almost 800 yards in the air, 7 touchdowns in the pick, and Hardy come out of the backfield for 460-plus yards and 5 touchdowns. And you see how they had that great game against Kansas, the old border war. They went back and forth, to win that one in the end. I mean, routed at Central Arkansas, routed at Louisiana. So it's going to be another huge test for Mizzou against South Carolina. Right now, Mizzou has an 80% analytical advantage and also 11.5-point spread advantage. No. If Sellers can stay healthy, South Carolina should make this home a game. I do think it's going to be a single-digit victory for Mizzou. Not single point, single digit. At the most 9, but I'm thinking more 7. So I'll probably take South Carolina for the points, Mizzou for the win. Then we over to Bloomington, Indiana, as the undefeated Hoosiers take on the undefeated Illini. And Illinois is ranked 9th right now. Haven't seen that for a long time. Illinois doing that extremely well. I mean, have they really taken on anyone tough? They blew out Western Illinois. They shut out Western Michigan. They had no issues against Duke. And for Indiana, struggled against Old Dominion. Blew out Kennesaw State. Demolished Indiana State. 73-0 to Sycamores. Whew. Why did Indiana State sign up for that beating? But for the Hoosiers, Mendoza, over 700 yards, 9 touchdowns. I think, once again, you look at the inflated numbers. Black comes in the backfield, only 200 yards plus with a touchdown. For the Illini, Altmaier, over 700 yards, 8 touchdowns. Once again, you kind of look at their inflated numbers. Fegan coming in the backfield for over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. So passing-wise, they're a little bit the same. Mendoza has a little bit slighter edge with that touchdown. Running attack-wise, that's more Illini. Defense-wise, I give it more to the Illini when you got Gabe Jacobs coming out with 3.5 sacks compared to Isaiah Jones with his 2. And 2 top tacklers with Hood for the Illini and Moore for the Hoosiers. I think it's going to be a good rival game between these two. This is kind of like an under-the-radar rivalry that doesn't really get a lot of attention. It goes back and forth, especially in the hardwood between these two. Right now, Indiana has a 62, almost 63% advantage analytically, and Vegas favors them at 4.5. Maybe it's my bias, but Illini is ranked 9th for a reason, and Indiana is not. I'm going to go with the Illini to win in Indiana and get that first win in the Big Ten season. In a classic rivalry game that used to be at the end of the year. Now it's kind of like the middle of the season, beginning of the season. The Apple Cup between Washington and Wazzu. Washington right now is 2-0, stuff in the rankings. Wazzu had that terrible outing against North Texas where they got blown out. Barely got past Idaho in the first week. And was able to manhandle San Diego State. And you looked at Washington, they decimated UC Davis, edged out Colorado State, and this is where we stand right now for the Huskies. Williams, 480 yards in the air, 2 touchdowns. Coleman out of the backfield for 280 yards, 7 touchdowns. So running the dogs right now is the key aspect of this offense. For the Cougars, Potter over 600 yards in the air, 4 touchdowns, 3 picks. That's what he has to clean up. If he can't clean up that, it's going to be huge issues for the Washington State throughout this game. But Voorhees, a yard shy of 120, no touchdowns. So right now, Kirby, coming out of that backfield, needs to be more impactful. Now, that's could be the factor that what happened in North Texas. They just couldn't get anything going. Right now, nothing for me screams Washington really deserves to be in here. This is going to be a classic game between these two. I do expect it will go back and forth. But right now, analytics has it Washington at 93%. They gave them a 20.5-point spread as well. It's the Apple Cup. You never know with these two. I think Washington State's going to be better suited to beat their in-state rival. This one, all signs are pointing towards Washington. You know me. I don't like following trends too much. I'm taking Wazzu to knock off Washington in the Apple Cup. Should be interesting to see how this one plays out, but as long as Potter keeps his interceptions down to a minimum and they are able to corral Coleman and lock it, put him in a cage, I think the Cougars will find ways to escape Pullman with upset win of their in-state rivals. Now it's time headed out to Waco, Texas, as the Arizona State Sun Devils come to town, take on Baylor. Both teams are 2-1. Both teams still trying to recover from some disappointing losses. Arizona State had that loss in Starkville where they were trailing, being shut out 17-0, came back to take the lead to 20, only to cough up the touchdown in the final seconds of the fourth quarter. And then Baylor had that game against Auburn where their special teams blew it and they just couldn't come back. And they had that wonderful bounce back against SMU where I think SMU was favored. Quite handled that one. I watched a little bit of Arizona State, Texas State. Arizona State looked very poised in that one. And for the Sun Devils, Leavitt over 520 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 picks. He's got to watch those interceptions. Brown comes in the backfield for almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns. For the Bears, Robertson over 1,000 yards already and 10 touchdowns with 2 picks. Yeah, Washington comes out of the backfield, 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, a lot of that I think is kind of inflated numbers. But if you look at how they've been scoring, they have been racking up some points. They put 42 on Samford. The 48 against SMU, 24 against Auburn. And Arizona State struggled against Mississippi State, only managing 20 points, but they got 34 against Texas State, 38 against Northern Arizona. So the defense is going to be the interesting part because Baylor's defense showed up against Samford, which is, I'm not saying much because that's an FCS team against an FBS team. You should kind of expect that a little bit. And the most points Arizona State gave up was 24 to Mississippi State. So I think maybe that defense of the Sun Devils could play more of a factor in this game than what's being led to. Right now, analytics favor Baylor at 53%. They also give them a 2.5-point spread advantage. I'm taking the Sun Devils to go into Waco and squeak out a victory. And unless things end things in the LA Coliseum as the 25th ranked undefeated USC Trojans take on undefeated Michigan State. Should be a very interesting game. USC took on Purdue last week. No questions. Georgia Southern, no questions. Missouri State, no questions. I mean, they've been beating the brakes off of people, but their offense is starting to tick down a little bit as the competition gets a little bit stiffer. For Michigan State, struggled a little bit against Western Michigan. Had to go to double overtime to get past Boston College. I almost went with that game and almost picked Boston College with that one. And then, Youngstown State able to outscore them 41-24. So the Spartans, Childs, over 650 yards in the air, 6 touchdowns in the pick. Frazier comes out of the backfield for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Why? Mayava, I'm probably mispronouncing your name, sir, and I do apologize. Almost 990 yards in the air, 6 touchdowns. And Jordan comes out of the backfield for over 280 yards and 3 touchdowns. So USC's offense looks more poised, more ready, because I got that Purdue game I can, at least lean on for a bit for clarity. Right now, USC has a 95% analytical advantage, and they also have a 15.5-point spread. Partly because what they did against Purdue and what Michigan State did against BC for this. I think Michigan State's numbers are a little inflated this year, or at least their record is. And you know what? I'm not going to doubt anything with USC on this one. I'm going to take the Trojans. There you go. Those are my 12. We'll see how this week plays out. Can I go 9-3 again? There's a possibility. Yeah, I did kind of do a couple stretches. Bucked the trend against a couple of teams, like taking Illinois, taking SMU, taking Arizona State. We'll see how things kind of, transpire from that one. Can Notre Dame bounce back against Purdue? Absolutely. That's why they didn't really cover that one. Plus, Notre Dame's 0-2. No one wants to hear about them. But here I am talking about them, so we are hearing about them. Whatever. Let me know down below what you think about my picks, which one I did completely wrong, which game you're looking forward to this weekend. Is your team still in a hunt for still doing well? Let's put it this way. Or you still kind of scratching your head and kind of figure out WTF. So mix it up, comments below. The more we interact, the more we boost the algorithm. All mine YouTube algorithm you play homage to to ensure our frontal cortexes are loaded with the lovely entertainment that we're watching at this present point in time. Another thing you can do to help this video out is hit that thumbs up, especially like what I do. Furthermore, if you want to further help this channel out, the best thing you can do is to subscribe. It costs you absolutely nothing. That's right, no tariffs, no fees, no interest. $0. You hit that subscribe button. Click that bell icon, turn on notifications, so you know next time I post any more content on my channel. Now, see you next time. Chat Sports Talk.